Silver has been used for thousands of years for its incredible healing properties, yet today it's one of the most misunderstood tools in natural health. In this episode, I sit down with Doug, a leading expert in silver, and my manufacturing partner who has helped me formulate and create Cleanse, Relieve, and Wash. In this conversation, we explore the history of silver, address common misconceptions, and dive into the science of how it actually works inside your body at every stage of life. If you've ever been curious or even hesitant about silver supplements, this episode is for you. Welcome to Follow Your Gut. I'm your host, Juniper. If you found yourself here, it means you're ready to unlock the happiest and healthiest version of yourself and step into your role as the most confident leader of your family's wellness. Together, we'll navigate the path to optimal health and vitality. Let's dive in and transform your life. Welcome to Follow Your Gut, Doug. It is a real honor to have you here, and your voice is going to be really supportive and really powerful to my audience. Everyone listening knows that I am a huge believer in silver. It healed my son, it changed my family's life, and now through ōNLē Organics, I've had the incredible opportunity to reach thousands and thousands of families around the world who are also experiencing the healing. But there's so much controversy around silver. There's so many misconceptions and myths. And I can't wait to go through all of that with you and just, talk about the history of silver, the evolution, the safety of it at different life stages, and just hear your expertise. So will you just introduce yourself to start, and we can just dive into this conversation?
Sure. Thanks for having me. My name's Doug, and I'm here as, I'm going to say, the person in the company that produces the silver for you, and have been doing this for many, many years now. And just, our whole foundation is to bring natural healing to people. And, silver has been around for thousands and thousands of years. We can trace the lineage of silver back to Egyptian times, Mayan times, Incan times, Chinese times. And if we just think about it for a second, why is the history of silver one of an antimicrobial property, let's say? If we look back to Egyptian times and some of those, prior civilizations, they were putting silver coins or silver pieces into milk vats to help preserve and keep food free of. Sorry, my cat just jumped on my desk here.
If I was home, my cat would be laying right here in between us.
She tries to do that. But silver has this rich history of an antimicrobial and antibacterial. So then if we get into, I'm going to say, almost current times, if we get to the early 1900s and we look at the Merrick Manual, which is the physician's or the doctor's desktop reference manual that every doctor has on their desk, silver was over 40 applications within the medical system in the early 1900s and late 1800s. Then the adoption of penicillin came in, and penicillin could eliminate bacteria a few seconds faster. It was patentable. The patent of silver ran out in the early 1900s, which means that it wasn't a product that was used by the pharmaceutical system anymore because they couldn't patent it. And we all know that the pharmaceutical system is driven by patents. So in came the antibiotics, and silver at that point was demonized because they couldn't control it. They couldn't make money on it. And we saw a lot of different herbs and botanicals that were demonized, in the early 1900s, right? And that's a huge story that we can go off completely on our own. Yeah. So, silver's been around for a long time. And, fast forward into today's age, and we'll touch upon, some of the do's and don'ts, let's say, as well. Because one of the fears that people have is when they go to Google and they look up colloidal silver, unfortunately, the first few pages of Google are going to say, it can turn you blue. It's got these different problems and it scares people away. And it creates this perception of, well, I don't want to take this because it's dangerous, right? And to be honest with you, there is truth within that information. When silver, just like any other product, is created incorrectly, it can lead to a bluing, graying of the skin. And the biggest problem that I have and that I see is we'll talk about the manufacturing of silver for a second. And if I'm going in a bit different direction, please feel free to reel me in
No,
because I just start rambling.
this is so good. I speak on all of this all of the time, but there's so much power to somebody else's voice. And you have been in the silver world for far longer than I have. And lucky for me, when I was going through my son's healing journey, I was lucky enough to be connected with you, which is, where you have taught me so much. And so for my listeners to be able to learn from you, the source where I have learned so much, is really powerful. So yeah, let's keep going.
Okay, cool. So when silver is made incorrectly, it can lead to argyria, which is that bluing, graying of the skin that you see all over Google or those kind of things. So my biggest challenge with that is people get sold these silver generators on Amazon for $10 to $20, for instance, right? And I'm in a lot of the groups on Facebook and stuff because I always just like to watch what people are doing and that kind of thing. But let's just look at this from like a scientific side and a common sense side for a second. So first and foremost, when somebody starts making silver in one of those home generators in a glass jar or that kind of thing, they'll have two silver rods and one's positively charged, one's negatively charged. But they're using the problem number one is they're using an extremely low power source, and some of them are battery powered and some of them are just household electricity, standard plug into the wall kind of power. That doesn't generate enough power to create, I'm going to say, a nano-sized silver particle. And particle size is super important here. Energetic frequency is super important here. And bonding silver to the water is super important here. So when people make these colloidal silvers at home, the first thing we also have to hope is they're getting like a 99.999% pure silver. Anything less than an absolute pure silver is going to have other metal compounds in it, and it's going to lead to a less effective product. Two, when people are making those colloidal silvers at home, they come out in fairly large chunks. They can be, when we're measuring nanometers here, but they can be flaky, right? And you'll see those silvers settle to the bottom of the jar, and then people shake it up before they ingest it. So the big concern with that is, well, if it's settling to the bottom of the jar and then you take it and you ingest it, well, then it's going to be stored within the fat cells of the body because it's not breaking down to a point that it's going to pass through, the waste system. So over time, it's going to build up. And then that graying of the skin is argyria, which is the silver molecules being stored in the fat cells over time. In short-term usages, and if we were under some kind of assault or really bad time that we needed to get, silver into our body for the antimicrobial properties in a very short term, yeah, do what you got to do, right? But what we're talking about here is long-term daily usage for immune support, digestive support, and the things that we're talking about here, right?
Yeah.
So what we've done is we've created a silver that's got an extremely small nanoparticle, under 10 nanometers, which means that you could put literally thousands of silver particles on the tip of this pen. What we also do differently is we actually bond it to the water molecule. So the silver molecules are impregnated into a structured water molecule, and that's done by frequency and vortexing. And then we charge it to 910 terahertz. And there's a bunch more science that comes within that. We're using, if anybody has a welder or a hot tub or anything, they know they've got that big power outlet, a 240 power outlet that plugs into the wall. That's the kind of energy that we're using. And we're using a 13 rod generator. So we've got 13 rods running at a frequency of 910 terahertz, pulsating those silver particles on a 99.999% pure silver. So what we're creating is something extremely small with high energy bonded to a water molecule that doesn't settle to the bottom of the jar. That silver will stay in suspension the lifespan of it, and we've got silver sitting for over 10 years that has no sediment whatsoever. So what that means is it's a silver that's being created safe and effectively for the body to be able to use on a daily basis. And in over 20 years of producing this product, we've never seen any side effects whatsoever. We've never seen anybody turn blue. We've never seen anybody with, I'm going to say, the fear factor of effects that can happen with this.
Well, I think all of that, that speaks to the product so much. And I just want to clarify a couple parts that you touched on. So it is impossible for cleanse to settle in the body. You flush it out.
It passes through in about 12 hours with good hydration. The biggest thing for people to do is be drinking the proper amount of water every day too, to flush it through the body, as well as to help circulate it through the body, because we want to get those silver particles circulating throughout the body. So it's combating the yeast, the bacteria, the fungus, and the mold, and the things that silver naturally combats.
And I remember you and I, so Argyria, this is when like the silver is settling in your body. It's settling in your organs. It's turning your skin this silvery blue color because you have so much buildup in your body. And this happens when you're not getting the particle size small enough or created in a professional environment where there is, you have put a tremendous amount of work and research behind how you create this silver so that it is safe. And so this is just a question that I get a lot. I get these questions in my DMs every single day. I feel scared to give my child silver. I feel scared to take silver. I don't want my child to have a heavy metal. So maybe we can touch on that part. Like, what differentiates silver from other heavy metals?
So let's go to the periodic table of elements. Remember that in about grade 6 science?
Yeah, I loved that.
Okay. So if we take and we look at that periodic table of elements, because there's elements on there that people take for their health and they're not afraid of. There's zinc, there's gold, there's copper, there's iron. There's all of those different elements that people are actively taking every day. Silver is completely unique in the periodic table of elements. If you look at it from an electrical standpoint, it's the only element on the periodic table that's actually missing an electron. And that's really, really interesting when we come to looking at silver from a health standpoint. Because what silver does, because it's negatively charged or missing that electron, is it actually steals electrons from yeast, bad bacteria, fungus, mold, and viruses is something we'll talk about a little bit differently because it's a different mechanism of action. But we can go right back to the periodic table of elements. And when we think about, we're talking about heavy metals and that kind of stuff. And one thing that people will refer to is if they wear silver jewelry, for instance, they'll get that green tinge around their finger or around their neck where they wear jewelry. The thing to know on that is it's actually not the silver that somebody's having a reaction to. It's the other metals that are within that jewelry, because that silver jewelry may be only 40 or 50% silver and then have other compounds in it that are actually causing that discoloration of the skin. But these are the things that people don't get educated on, right? And the unfortunate thing is, and I'm going to say this as my personal side of things to keep us safe, is silver is one of the most heavily demonized substances for people to use in health because it's so dang effective. And if we look at the other side of the equation, we've got the natural space and we've got the non-natural space, right? The non-natural space absolutely hate silver, but they control the biggest lobbying groups in Washington. They control that whole empire of, I'm going to say, unnatural wellness. So as soon as we see something that is a competitor to them, they're going to demonize and scare people from taking it. But
Absolutely.
if we look at the science and we look at the truth and we look at the facts about silver, people are actually quite surprised. And as you know from your clients that have used it, that have come in a little bit fearful, and then they're like, oh my goodness, like this has helped fix XYZ concerns. The stories are unreal. The hard thing is just getting over that perception of the negative information that's put out there to scare people.
Well, you really have to, and you have to dig deep because it's really unfortunate. And I don't know if I'm sure that you see this too, but it's really hard to find scientific findings or research articles on the positive effects of silver because of this very same reason, right?
Mhm.
Like, this is a very effective competitor to big pharma. And unfortunately, they have money and enough control that as soon as a pro silver article is published, it gets taken down. And so if you, I mean, I was like this when my second child, when he was born, and I mean, he had a whole slew of symptoms: eczema, digestive issues, sleep. His whole body was really struggling. And it took us 2.5 years, but we finally went to a naturopath who taught us that he had a really severe gut imbalance. He had way too much candida in his gut. And he's the one who introduced me to silver. And it was at that time, I mean, I was terrified because when I Googled, should I be giving my child silver? It was pages and pages of why it is so dangerous and it's so bad. And it took me digging really, really deep to come to a place where I trusted my naturopath enough to give my child silver. So I have a lot of understanding and compassion for the women in my community who come with these concerns because I had these same concerns myself. And it took me having to dig really, really, really deep to come to a place of confidence and trusting what makes sense intuitively versus this picture that Western medicine has drawn about silver. And something that you said, just for any listeners, when Doug said, I'm going to say this personally to keep us safe, in a natural health space, you have to be very careful about the words that you use for the exact reason that we're having this conversation, because this is not a message that is profitable to our Western medicine world. And my dream of having this conversation with you is to help answer these questions and to help bring peace of mind to so many people so they don't have to dig so deep. So thank you for that. And something else about, when I get the heavy metal question, is it's kind of, there's kind of this irony because zeolites are a really big thing also in the natural health community to help detox heavy metals. But the irony in that for me is the zeolites are high in aluminum. And so when people come to me and ask, what are your thoughts on heavy metals? I'm trying to detox heavy metals. Isn't silver a heavy metal? Am I going to have to detox from this silver? Can we just talk? Can we just, if I forwarded you that question, how would you answer that? I just want people to hear that from your perspective.
So what I'm going to do is talk about the ōNLē cleanse silver in regards to the answer of this question.
Okay.
Because when we look at what we were talking about earlier with different forms of silvers and whole silvers and that kind of thing, and those particular building up in the body, right? So it's hard. It's like anything when we look at supplements or anything. There's good, better, best, right? And so when we look at inferior forms of silver, those concerns are correct, right? It can build up in the body. It's too big. It's too big for the body to process. It also because it's a low energetic frequency. It's running itself out of energy by the time it hits the digestive system. So, that's where we see, and people make these references of like your silver is a 30 part per million silver, right? And some silvers on the market are 300, 500, 700 part per million. And people will say, well, how come yours is only 30 and mine's 700 and, mine must be better? Well, it's not the case. It's not the truth. It's all about the efficiency of being able to do what it does. And you don't need a lot of silver to be highly effective. So in regards to your cleanse silver, once again, we've got this down to under 10 nanometers in size, and we've got spectrum analysis reports measuring it to make sure there's no clusters, no clumps, no large particles or anything. That, and plus it being embedded into the water molecule circulating through the body, everything has shown over 20 years that we get that silver out of the body in approximately 12 hours. And the other side of it is, I would say we've probably helped 100 to 200,000 people with different health concerns with silver. And not ever even one remote concern of somebody turning blue or having a negative effect to the product whatsoever. The only concern we will get from time to time is some Hertzheimer effect, because silver is very effective, especially when we're getting into yeast. And we all know, anybody that's had, yeast concerns, know that yeast is a bugger on the body when it starts dying. It makes you feel bad. It makes you feel tired. It gives you flu-like symptoms. So when I get people that reach out and say, hey, I started taking this silver, I feel crappy, I've got no energy. In some cases, we'll see people that will actually get like an acne or a rash from taking it. And they're like, oh my goodness, I'm having this negative effect. I'm like, no, this is great. Like, it's working. And that's what we see, is the yeast trying to escape the body, getting trapped in the skin and causing a little rash for a couple of days. It's not the body having a nefarious reaction. It's what's happening in the body as a part of the healing process. And 100% of the time when I've had this conversation with people, it does go away in a few days. They notice they start to get a lot better mental clarity. Their energy starts to rebound, and they're like, oh my goodness, like I feel so good. And, the yeast is going away. We spent 2 years touring and speaking at women's wellness clinics a few years ago. And in regards to the female part of the body, that is and can we talk about these sort of subjects?
Oh yeah. Vagina,
Okay.
it's all
Okay,
over.
cool.
Yeah.
So as a male, right, going in and speaking to large audiences of females, that I have heard every single vaginal story that you can hear as a guy. So I don't turn red by it anymore. I've heard it all. And I hope this speaks to somebody that's out there listening, is when I hear of marriages breaking down, when I hear of women that are trapped in their body due to yeast and concerns happening in that part of the body, completely disempowered, and have tried everything that the natural space can offer them, as well as anything that the pharmaceutical system can throw at them, and they're just stuck because they've got this pH battle going, highly positive, highly negative. How do I regulate this and get myself back to normal? And using the silver gel, using the silver liquid, you can douche with that. There's no better feeling than when talking to, like I say, from a guy talking to a woman that is going through this absolute tragedy. And a week or two later, she phones me and she's like, Doug, I just had sex with my husband for the first time in 3 years. And I can just go on and on with stories about this, and just seeing that transformation and change, and women being able to get their body back.
Well, this is why you and I are here, is because I saw my son heal after 2.5 years of suffering. I have now had the absolute honor of supporting thousands and thousands of women and children in healing in this exact same way. And this isn't easy work. And you and I are really putting ourselves out there to share this message. And it's worth it because sharing that healing and then receiving that feedback, I mean, we are all born with a purpose and this is part of ours.
Totally. Well,
Yeah.
and if we look at like, why does silver work? What does it do? Why is it giving people, this second chance in these healings? Is silver naturally combats, or let's say cleanses, yeast, bacteria, fungus, and mold, right? So when we look at what are the predominant issues that are causing people to be unwell, right? It's one of those. And the unfortunate thing that we run into in this day and age is people live to their label. And what I mean by that is they go to the doctor and the nurse spends 15 minutes with them, taking some blood and doing some tests with them. Then they get 5 minutes with the doctor, and the doctor says, you've got such and such a condition, writes a prescription, sends you home, and that's your new label, whatever it is, right? And people live to that, and they'll say, okay, well, I got fibromyalgia, I got this, or I got that, or whatever that's been deemed on me. But nobody ever goes home and says, okay, I just went to the doc, they gave me this label, what's causing it, right? Because the
Exactly.
doctor's never going to tell you.
Why doesn't why isn't it just common practice that the doctor says, okay, let's look deeper. What is causing this? Like that's where the foundation of healing should be is when you are given that diagnosis, it should be dissected right there. Okay, let's go deeper. What's behind this? Why do you have it?
Right, right. And we know what's causing it, right? It's the food and it's the chemicals. But we'll spin around to this in a second.
Yes.
So somebody comes home, they can say they've got that diagnosis. They don't answer the questions. 9 times out of 10, they go to the pharmacy, they get a prescription, and they're only going to make the problem worse. And then they're going to say, okay, well, this prescription, made this worse, so now I get another prescription for that. And we talked about the heavy metals, and we talked about sort of the perceived side effects of this. And people will get to be afraid of it and say, well, I'm not going to take it. But they'll run to the pharmacy and take the drugs, right? And you just have to watch a TV commercial to see the nefarious side effects to everything that they're taking. So when we look at healing the body and we look at our bodies and we look at what's making us sick, right? And let's just go to, we can talk about like divine creation or however we think that our bodies came into existence, right? And people can believe whatever and however they want on that. But let's just take an organic approach to that for a second to realize that our bodies are an organic being with an earth that supplies wellness. The number one problem that we do to this body is we put substances into this body that were never made to work with the body. And we see that in the chemicalization of our foods. We see that in the chemicalization of our household cleaning products. We see that in our personal care products. But we bombard our bodies with products or substances that it was never developed to be able to use. And that's why we're seeing this massive decline in health, right? So as to what you're doing, with ōNLē Organics and what we're doing in producing the product is saying, the silver isn't the healing, treating, curing product, right? The body's the healing, treating, curing machine. What the silver does, just like other forms of absolute bare nutrition, vitamins, herbs, botanicals, is it's giving the body what the body needs to heal itself, right? And that used to come from our foods, but it no longer does. So when people look at a product, the most important thing that they can look at is the supplement facts panel, right? That's going to be the first place to tell if a company cares about you or not. Because if a product is made with all sorts of nefarious ingredients and ingredients that you can't pronounce or understand, well, those are all chemicals. Those are all laboratory created substances that are going to further making you sick and not complementing your healing journey. So what I like about what you're doing with all of your products is you're paying so close attention to every single thing that goes into your products to assist in the body to be able to heal itself. And silver is just one piece of that puzzle, right? Because if silver's not going to deliver, vitamins, minerals, and herbs to the restorative process of the body, it's going to cleanse the yeast, bacteria, fungus, mold, and viruses out of the body so that we can get the body, let's say, to ground zero or to a neutral state that we can start building it back. But if we can eradicate the body, like I say, of these pathogens, of these yeast, these bacteria, then the digestive system starts to function properly. The leaky gut syndrome that probably 90% of the people are suffering from starts to stitch back the walls of the stomach so we can stop those toxins from leaching out of the stomach and distributing themselves throughout the body. So there's so many things that we can do is if we just start to go through course correction.
I love that. And that is the reason I named my business ōNLē Organics, because it only contains the ingredients that we need. Mm-hmm. And so I appreciate you touching on that. And I love this perspective of your body is the machine. The silver is just here to help your body function optimally. And so to circle back really quickly for the heavy metals. So we talked about the periodic table. Now I just want a very clear answer for listeners. Silver is not considered a heavy metal in our body like mercury, for example, because our bodies process it differently. Is that right?
Correct. And silver, in the way that we construct it, actually doesn't put any workload on the immune system. It's not metabolized, I guess is the best way to say it. So what you're talking about there in regards to mercury or these other substances requires an action of the body to break it down, to metabolize it. Silver bypasses the digestive system and it bypasses the immune system. So when we've got a really, really sick gut, right, and we've got a really bad microbiome, if we introduce probiotics, if we introduce lots of different forms of supplementation, then the digestive system needs to break those down. And this is where you see those pictures of outhouses after a rock concert or something like that, and they're all full of different pills and that kind of thing that the body hasn't broken down. So you've got to look at your digestive system for a second is a bit of a battlefield. You've got, this good biome versus this bad biome, warring with each other. So when our body is sick and tired and we introduce a whole bunch of supplementation to it, the digestive system kind of looks at it and says, I got no extra workload to break this down and use it. So I'm just going to, push it through the waste system. And that's where so many people are wasting money on supplements just going down the toilet. Silver is completely different, where it's like, it doesn't need any help from the digestive system or the probiotic bacteria in the digestive system to break it down. It's instantly going to work to help the good biome in the digestive system to combat that bacteria and those pathogens in the digestive system. It also doesn't command a function of the immune system to be able to be put into work. So it's instant action, let's say. So this is where people will see relief very quickly with this, and it's not being broken down. So when we talk about these other heavy metals, silver is in its own classification outside of that, and it's not a heavy metal that's going to build up in the body over time, providing it's produced correctly.
Right. Okay. And then we also talked about how it's going to kill yeast, bad bacteria, fungus, mold. Can we just talk about how this actually, what is happening inside our bodies? How is the silver working? We talked about it earlier, how silver is missing an electron, and that has something to do with this process. But can we kind of paint that picture so people can really visualize what the silver is doing in their body?
Totally. So when we look at, I'm going to say, different vitamins, mineral, herbs that are antimicrobials or antibacterials, okay? When they're ingested into the body, they are commanding a function of the digestive system to break that down to release its contents, right? Silver is different in the fact it's missing this electron. So what it's doing is it's constantly positing and giving electrons, recharging itself. So when we look at a bad bacteria, we look at a yeast, we look at a mold, what they are is they're all living organisms to start with, right? What silver's doing is silver's stealing its electrical charge, causing it to rupture. So rather than having to burrow in from the outside and tear apart that bacteria, we're hitting it at its energetic core or its energetic nucleus, causing it to rupture, and then the immune system cleans that up. So when we look at the big scary thing out there right now is this antibiotic resistant bacteria that the medical system has given up hope on. Is silver is able to actually address that antibiotic resistant bacteria in the same principle it is against the pathogenic bacteria, by causing it to rupture at its cellular core, stealing that cellular membrane out of those. When we look at viruses, for instance, viruses are different than a yeast, a bacteria, fungus, and a mold. Viruses are an incomplete DNA molecule circulating through the body, looking through an energy source, predominantly finding a white blood cell, which is the most energetic property in the body until silver is introduced. So studies have shown that when silver is introduced from a viral outbreak, then the silver becomes actually the most energetic property in the body, and the viral molecules will attach themselves to the silver molecule and ride them out through the waste system. Or in fact, we get a viral outbreak, silver joins forces with the immune system to help mop up the mess that's making us sick.
Wow.
That's a lot.
That's amazing. I did not know that about how it works with viruses. So that's really cool to hear that.
Yeah.
Um,
I stay away from talking about viruses just due to the last 4 years. But
yeah.
if we look at a mechanism of action, that there is published information on this. So it's not just me talking about what I think, but people can go to PubMed and National Institute of Health and find this information that's published on there. That's just like the quick Coles Notes version of how it works.
So another question that I get really frequently, and another really big misconception, is that silver works like antibiotics. It's going to destroy your good microbiome along with the bad. So can we touch on that?
Yeah. So our good given, or I call it our God-given natural bacteria, excretes what's called a lipid fat milk barrier around itself. So when we look at pathogenic bacteria or antibiotic resistant bacteria, it's basically evolved itself to a place where it's got a hard shell around it. Almost like, think of a candy coated shell with the chocolate inside. And so this is where we talk about antibiotic resistant bacteria. Is the antibiotics are no longer able to penetrate through that hard shell of the antibiotic resistant bacteria. So since we're stealing the electron from that, we don't have to try and break through the shell. We can go straight to the cellular core. In regards to our good bacteria that's natural within the body, it excretes this lipid fat milk barrier to surround itself. What we've done, particularly with our silver that we create for you, is we haven't charged it to an energetic frequency that can break through that lipid fat milk barrier. So we essentially repel it. So we're
Okay.
not harming the natural gut microbiome with this, but going after the foreign invaders.
Okay, which brings us to the next really good point to talk about is what differentiates cleanse. There are so many different kinds of silvers. So maybe we can list those silvers: colloidal, nano. There's so many different kinds of silver. And so why is it important to use a silver like cleanse that is alkaline and pH and charged at a specific frequency over these other ones, and how are they created? What's the difference? So because I'm imagining, as you're speaking to what makes cleanse different and why it doesn't harm the microbiome, are other silvers going to harm the microbiome?
It depends on the silver. It's depending how it's made. It's depending on the particle size. It's depending on the frequency. So the one thing that I will say is, if somebody was to go into a health food store, because I know the manufacturers of all the different silver products on the market, if somebody's going into a health food store and sees one of the silver products on the shelf, I'm going to say with good conviction that those products are going to be safe. Okay.
Okay.
My biggest concern is when I talk about silver is these cheap $20 and $30 generator silvers that people make at home that settle the silver to the bottom of the jar in big particles, right? What makes, if we're in the health food store and we've got Cleanse and the other silver products on the market, and we're talking about like nano silver, structured silver, all of these kind of things, because this creates confusion in the marketplace as well. So when we think of a nano silver is a definition of particle size. It's nothing to do with the nanobots and the nanotechnology that's in the things that people put in their arms, and everybody got afraid of the word nano over the last couple of years. When we speak to nano in regards to silver, it's particle size. What makes your Cleanse different than the other silvers on the market is, one, it's an alkaline, it's not an acid. Okay. So what that means is an alkaline is going to be embraced by the immune system, not rejected. It's going to be, when we look at people that are going through cancer treatment, the first thing the doctors want to do is get the body into an alkaline state. Yeast and bacteria, fungus, mold can't flourish in an alkaline state, right? So that's why we do the silver in an alkaline state, so that it's going to be embraced by the body.
Because silver naturally is very acidic. So when you're making just if there's just a colloidal silver, so that's silver just suspended in purified water, that end product is very acidic.
It's going to be an acid, yeah,
Okay.
which means it's hard on the immune system. So, but that's in regards to the ingestible Cleanse is a pH balanced alkaline, okay?
Yes.
On the silver gel is actually slightly acidic because the natural biome of our skin is acidic. So we don't want to have a full alkaline on the skin. We want to have a slightly acidic. So just a note on that for you.
That's really interesting. Okay.
Yeah.
I actually did not know that the pH is different in the gel than in the liquid.
It is, because we want to make sure that we're formulating these products to complement the biome of the environment that they're being introduced to. Right? So the skin slightly acidic, the interior or taking it, ingesting is going to be an alkaline.
Okay. And so I'm going to take a little tangent here, but the gel is really amazing for vaginal healing, right? Like the topical area of the vagina. But if you're going internally, you want to use the liquid.
I would use the liquid, and you can douche with the liquid,
Okay.
or you can spray it all over that area. Is the best way to cleanse that. And
Okay.
a lot of people do silver enemas as well.
Oh, I've actually not considered that.
Yeah. So that's just something to think about as well. Because the thing to think about, and this just goes right back to what we were talking a little while ago, is if we know that the concerns that people are facing are yeast, bacteria, fungus, mold, right? What we want to do is we want to get silver introduced to the area that's affected by that, because we know with indirect contact, we're going to, help eliminate those within about 2 minutes. So when we think about usage, whether it's the eyes, the ears, internal, oral, however we can get that introduced to the affected areas of the body, we know we're going to have success with that.
Okay. So let's go back to we're looking at a lineup of silver. Is there anything else that differentiates Cleanse from other silvers that you would find at a health food store?
Yeah. So we're back to energetic frequency, 910 terahertz. No other silver is being charged to that. We're the pH balanced alkaline. We're the structured water as compared to a purified or a distilled water. And if we look at structured water is way more absorbent, and we haven't demineralized the water like happens with the purified or distilled water. There's another silver company out there that claims that they have pharmaceutical grade water. That's a bunch of BS. There's no such thing as pharmaceutical grade water. So
What is that?
There's so much incorrect information that companies put out there to sell product, and people buy into it. So if anybody ever sees pharmaceutical grade water, it's just a distilled water like that they've given a name to. So if anybody wants to read into structured water and the benefits of structured water, they can read Roy Pollock's work. He's one of the leading experts on structured water, and understanding that the whole profile of the water changes, and not for the negative, but for the positive, to be absorbed and delivered throughout the body and deliver frequency throughout the water. So we're alkaline, we're structured water, we're pH balanced. And then the last thing I'm going to say that makes a huge difference when we're talking about recharging itself is we're actually, when we look at a structured water molecule, imagine in your mind for a second a tetrahedral shape or a kite. Just imagine a kite, for instance. And in that kite, on each corner of the kite is an oxygen molecule. And within each of those oxygen molecules is embedded the silver molecule. So what that does is it creates a catalytic firing action because we've got 4 silver particles per water molecule that create this catalytic firing action cross, up and down, which are continually recharging itself, meaning that it's going to be as active as it exits the body as it is when it enters the body. So we were talking earlier about these different colloidal silvers and these silvers that are 300, 500 parts per million. Well, they're a 1-to-1 kill rate because they don't have that recharging property built within how we've structured that within the water. So that's where they need to have a huge parts per million of silver so that it can have that effectiveness longer in the body. So what we've been able to demonstrate with this silver is, like I say, we're just as effective going into the body to 30 part per million as we are coming out, 10 to 12 hours later. So that's 10 to 12 hours of that silver molecule circulating throughout the body, wiping out millions and millions of bad bacteria its time in the body, right? And that's why we want to take it twice a day as well. So we keep that 24-hour cycle going. And when I'm saying millions and millions of bacteria, get ruptured, somebody say, well, that, within a couple hours, I don't have any more bad stuff anymore. Well, just to put it into perspective, there's more bad bacteria in your mouth right now than there is people on the planet. So when we think about the amount of overload that we have, in the body, yeah, this is making a great difference and we want to do it and we want to get in control of it. But we do have billions and billions of bad bacteria and yeast and viruses, circulating through our body at any given time.
Okay, so you kind of blew my mind with something that you said that I did not realize that it's the same 30 parts per million when we eliminate it. And we eliminate it through our urine, correct?
Yeah.
So I'll just share this story really quickly. My donkey, he's really old. We adopted him a year ago, and one of his hooves is it's collapsed a little bit, and so he will get infections in his hoof. And so I went out one night and I had a bowl. I had a bowl of cleanse mixed with some oats, and I had another bowl of cleanse mixed with some Epsom salts. And I soaked his foot in the Epsom salt cleanse bowl. And then I just he just like slurped up these oats. And the next morning he was just walking so beautiful. And I mean, it healed him so quickly. And so when you're saying that, we're eliminating the same 30 parts per million, I'm just picturing the size of his pee out there and how healthy their corral area is.
Yes. That's a good way to look at it. And we can give this to our animals just like we do ourselves, right? So, if we look at, if you think about the amount of customers or clients that you have that suffer from urinary tract infections, the best way to combat an urinary tract infection with the cleanse is actually taking a quarter of the bottle first thing in the morning, and then
Wow, really?
2 tablespoons every hour for every hour for about 8 hours after that. So you're gonna need a couple bottles, because what we want to do is we want to completely fill up the
bladder with.
fill up the bladder, and then keep that bladder saturated for about 2 days, because yeast infections can be constantly reoccurring. But I've seen so much success with women and urinary tract infections following that serving regimen for a couple days that they're like, I've suffered from this from years, it's gone. So keep that in mind as well.
Wow, I will put that. I have a course that I give to people who get my women's and children's gut rebalance kits, so I'm going to share that in there.
Okay.
Because
Perfect.
especially like reoccurring UTIs, that is a huge, huge, and then of course they go to the doctor and they're prescribed rounds and rounds and rounds of antibiotics, which are of course exacerbating the root problem. So that's wonderful. Okay, so I want to talk about the frequency of the silver. We've talked, so I just want to have, I love having just like a very clear visual of what this means. So, how is it, how do you make it at this frequency? What happens in that process? And then after that, I'm going to forget to ask this question. So I want to ask right now is I get asked a lot, what is the pH buffer system? What is that? So, and I think we can kind of talk about it hand in hand.
Yeah, it's a sodium nacrylate. It's almost it's like a derivative of baking soda, but a natural occurring that helps balance the pH to stabilize it.
Okay. Because there's a lot in the natural world. They're talking about if you have anything that is alkaline without you doing it right here, it's bottled. There's bad chemicals involved. And so I just want, from you as the manufacturer, I just want to share that information that is basically like a sodium bicarbonate.
Yeah, yeah, and it's natural. Like we won't put any unnatural or laboratory um, derived ingredients in anything that we make.
So I think biggest takeaway from this conversation is that I am here to partner and create the absolute best of the best. And every product at ōNLē has been very intentionally created, and cleanse is no different. And so every single part of cleanse, how it is manufactured to how it's bottled, is by design and very intentional. Are there any other myths or misconceptions around silver that we haven't talked about that come to mind for you?
I think we covered the bulk of that myths and misconceptions. The biggest thing is for people to be able to choose the right one and then trust. And like I say, there isn't a higher advanced silver on the market than the one that you were delivering. I think you had a bunch of questions written down too that you had from some of your
Yes. So I
customers.
shared on my Instagram stories this morning that we were going to be having this conversation, and I asked if they had any questions they wanted me to ask you. So I'm going to go onto Instagram right now and I'm just going to read these questions from the bottom to the top. So, okay, the first question we have here is, can you take it for too long and will it always have the same power to help your body?
We've got people that have been taking it for 10 plus years with no concern whatsoever. Will it lessen its effectiveness? No, because when we look at what silver is doing is it's naturally cleansing yeast, bacteria, fungus, and mold, right? So our body is being assaulted with new pathogens and new foreign invaders every day. So in my opinion, this is one of the best immune support products that people can take day in and day out for a long period of time.
I want to add to this. So when I healed my son,
Mm-hmm.
I saw the power of silver heal his body. I thought we would be done. His symptoms would kind of creep back in here and there. And it took me time to get to a place of having confidence in the silver to incorporate it in my family. And once I got to this place, once I had learned enough, and once I really trusted the product, we started taking it every single day. And we don't get sick. Like if we are exposed to any type of illness, we may get tired for a couple days, but we do not experience that same like bedridden sickness that we used to. We have taken it every single day for years and years and years now. And I have zero concern because I absolutely 100% trust this product, which is why I sought you out and I partnered with you, is because I wanted a product for my family that I could trust and that I know all the ins and outs about this product. And sharing it is really just an extension of what I created for my own family to use. So I just want to add that with that question. Okay, the next one. How do I talk to my traditional doctor and tell them I'm taking a liquid silver supplement without getting judgment?
You won't. Like, the unfortunate thing is a traditional MD medical doctor, right, isn't legally allowed to talk about any kind of health products that aren't in the Merrick manual, aren't in the physician's desktop manual. So he doesn't know anything about it. He hasn't done any research on it. He can't, under his license as a medical doctor, say, yeah, take it or don't take it. He's predominantly going to say don't take it because, a doctor, unfortunately, is a product of the pharmaceutical system. There are some good doctors out there that'll say, yeah, you got to do everything you've got to do to help yourself. But the unfortunate thing is your traditional medical doctor will frown upon it. And we've had cases where we've got families of younger and older generation people that have been in the hospital. The hospital system and the medical system has thrown up their arms in the air and said, there's nothing we can do for this person from, lots of different things that they're suffering from. And, they've come to their end. I've had family members that sneak silver in and put it in the water of the people in the hospital, but we've walked a lot of people out of the hospital that a lot of, systems have given up on, right? So sorry, the short answer to what your customer is asking there is an MD is not going to give you a clear thumbs up to take this. It's just the way the system is. It's nothing about the product. It's just what he's allowed to do within his licensing.
Well, and I'll add to that too, that in my experience, and now I'm supporting so many other women, is there are a lot of even, more naturopathic providers who just haven't been educated on silver. And so a lot of naturopaths will say yes. I mean, that's where I was introduced, but a lot of them will say no. A lot of midwives are very passionate about silver. My midwife carries it in her office.
Yeah.
A lot of midwives will say no, that is so dangerous. And so if you're running into somebody who is saying that it's dangerous, they're likely just not educated. They don't know about silver enough to speak to it.
Well, and we've seen, I attend the naturopathic doctor conference every year in Las Vegas, and I've spoken at a number of times as well. And I've seen a real shift over the last few years, especially with the new naturopathic doctors coming into practice versus the old school. The old school was 100%, yeah, we're all over this. The problem is a lot of these new naturopathic schools or online schools, they're a quick turnaround time. They don't tear into this a lot. And we've got a number of naturopathic schools that we work with and is a part of their protocol, let's say, in development of these young doctors. But it all depends on where they're getting their education from. But I also find, and this is a sad thing, but at the end of the day, you're a supplement brand owner with the ōNLē Organics brand, right? Is so much of the natural product market is driven now by influencers and social media, not driven by science. And that's really crept into the naturopathic philosophy and training, let's say, whereas they're coming out looking for Shilajit. They're coming out looking for all of these trending supplements. And, if we want to talk about heavy metals, look at a lab report on Shilajit. It'll scare the daylights out of you. Like, it's crazy how actual bad a lot of Shilajits on the market are. So I find that the naturopathic system is so much chasing trends right now than actually chasing pure science to heal people.
Well, I see that so much too. I will get, an influencer will post something negative about silver, and I'll have 100 women forward it to me and say, "What are your thoughts on this? This terrifies me." And what I respond to is that when there is fear around silver, it means that you just don't quite know enough.
Mm-hmm.
And so hopefully this conversation helps fill that gap for many people, because it's misinformation and being uneducated that leads to this fear. And then that fear, I mean, it's really wild how influential influencer marketing actually is. It is the most powerful marketing that has ever existed, because these are relatable people. These are people that we feel like we might be best friends with.
Mhm.
And what they say means so much to us. And the truth, though, is that not everybody can be an expert in everything. And a lot of these companies, they're paying influencers a lot of money to promote different products. And not that that is necessarily bad, but it creates these trends that aren't based on science and history, but on what's happening right now and what big company is paying a lot of money.
Well, they're either paying a lot of money or that influencer is an affiliate for another company. And it's like they play that, I'll demonize this to promote that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So they'll say, don't take silver, take this other thing. It's better. And the unfortunate thing is 99% of the influencers out there aren't doing any kind of research into anything that they're promoting whatsoever. They're strictly doing it for the money. There's a small amount out there, but I mean, I've worked with some of the biggest name biohackers on the planet that everybody knows, and you'd be shocked in the amount of research that they don't even do about the things that they promote.
Yeah.
So, we really have to look at what's being said out there, and then even the decisions that we make within our own wellness. And I find so often nowadays that people aren't making the same common sense approaches to looking at things as they did in the past, because social media has created this environment that I need an answer in 30 seconds or I'm moving on, right? So when we look at creating content, and you even look at the content and the reels that you create for your audience to watch, people just get a lesser and lesser and lesser span of what they're going to dedicate to listening or something. So even when they come into researching what product should I take, what product shouldn't I take, so often than not, it's the last reel they've seen. And they said, oh, so-and-so said this is good, I'm going to take it, without taking some time to say, well, do I need it? Should I take it? And is this the right thing for me to take?
Absolutely. Okay, the next question here is, how is cleanse and relieve different from other detox protocols like TRS zeolites?
So zeolite's a binder. Cleanse isn't a binder, right? So zeolite, just like the humic, right? So the humic is a foundational property of zeolite. So the humic is a binder. It's going to help pull those heavy metals and those toxins from the cells. So look at it, it's almost, rather than silver being a replacement of one of those, look at it as a two-step scenario. Silver is going to come in, cleanse the yeast, bacteria, fungus, mold, and viruses, and then the humic or the zeolite is going to come in and pull those toxins and get them out of the body. So I wouldn't look at them as an either or. I'd look at them as a 1+2.
Okay, and I have not launched my product, my humic, yet, but it is coming soon.
It's coming. That's why I mentioned it.
Yes, thank you. I wanted to do that in this episode. Okay, so the next one, where did the narrative that silver isn't safe come from? We've kind of touched on that here a lot, but
so it goes back to the 1930s with the Flexner report. We could spend 2 hours talking about this, where the Rockefellers bought up the pharmaceutical system and demonized everything that didn't have a patent around it. But that's where it initially started. And then if we really want to tear into the Blue Man scenario for a second, which really launched the fear of silver. So the Blue Man, his name's Paul. He was a product of the pharmaceutical system. I'll say that right there. People can research and read the story on this. But he wasn't even making a colloidal silver. He was taking silver coins, putting him into 5-gallon pails with water and nitric oxide to break down the silver. So he was taking an impure silver, because a silver coin isn't a 99.99%. So he was taking a less effective silver, right? And using nitric oxide and other detergents to break down those silver coins. And he was drinking gallons of it a day. So he had no choice but to turn blue. Like it was going to happen, but he was taking such an inferior product. So Oprah Winfrey put him on a show. Big Pharma spent millions of dollars promoting that to demonize silver. So we're not even talking about, when I was talking earlier about the silvers that I don't like that are made in these cheap homemade systems, he was taking an even lesser inferior silver than that. And that's unfortunately what caused the news media and has filled up people's minds for years since that silver is dangerous.
Wow. I thought that he just had like a home machine. I didn't know.
No, he was making it in the absolute worst way. Like nobody in their right mind would drink that.
Yeah. Let alone, I mean, I wouldn't drink gallons of anything a day.
Exactly. So that is the true documented story about that and the blue man and everything else.
Okay. The next question: are there resources or studies we can turn to when people question the safety of silver?
Yeah, PubMed, National Institute of Health are the two best ones that have over 5,000 peer-reviewed research papers on the effectiveness of silver with so many different concerns.
Okay.
Yeah.
Are there any differences between ōNLē Silver and other brands? We've touched on that. I think we've answered that question
Yeah.
throughout the episode, but
pH balanced, alkaline, structured, 910 terahertz, reoccurring recharging of the molecule is the main ones.
can you talk about using cleanse in pregnancy?
Yeah. Back to the point that it doesn't metabolize in the body is, and I'm going to preface this, and it's kind of a bad preface, but as per FDA guidelines, always consult your physician before taking anything, right? But we've seen countless moms use silver during pregnancy without ever a concern. But I'll just always preface it with the consult the physician first.
Well, and I like to talk about, because I get this question, I'm scared to tell my physician that I'm using this. And my response is it might be a really good opportunity to find a healthcare provider that is in alignment with you.
Right.
Because there are many out there who, my naturopath introduced me to silver. I was pregnant with my third child and I took it to my midwife and I said, my naturopath wants me to take this. And she's like, look, I give it to moms all the time. Like I have it right here on my shelf. And so they do exist. And when we find ourselves in a space where we are scared to share what's working for us, I see it as a really good invitation to maybe put ourselves in a different environment where we feel in alignment.
Mm-hmm. Well,
Um,
and your best doctor that you're ever going to see is looking at you in the mirror.
exactly.
Right.
You know you best.
Right.
And so and this is the other part is, I get the question a lot, is it safe during pregnancy? And I understand that we have all been conditioned to believe that doing anything different in pregnancy is really risky and really dangerous. But the question to me should actually be the opposite. It should be, what are the risks of not cleansing this out of my body during pregnancy?
Well, and you can bring that back to a question to somebody too, and just say, have you ever heard of or read any reports of somebody having a negative or nefarious response to something 100% natural?
Hmm.
Right. And just stew on that for a second. Right. If we take the properties and compounds of the earth in their absolute raw stage as they are meant to be harvested or delivered to the body, do we see side effects of that? And
Mm,
and
that's
I'm
very
going
interesting.
to say no, right? So when we look at the cleanse silver, for instance, it falls right within that discussion where it's 100% natural product being delivered to the body as it's intended to be delivered. And that's where I can say over 20 years, we've never seen any side effects or any nefarious responses to that because we haven't done anything to adulterate it to make it not recognized by the body. So just for anybody listening, just stew on that for a second. And it's a lot more to think about than just those few words that I said.
Okay. Can you talk about early postpartum and taking it while breastfeeding?
Breastfeeding, people will use it, and I've got lots of nursing moms. I just had a new granddaughter that's going to be a year in a couple of weeks.
Oh.
And so, when she was born, she had a few, different little skin conditions in her young age. The silver gel is killer for diaper rash. I'll tell you that right now.
It's so good. Yeah.
Yeah. And if baby has, like babies and they get their sharp little fingernails and they start clawing themselves and doing all that kind of stuff, great to use the silver gel for that. But I even was actually, for my daughter-in-law and son-in-law, putting the silver liquid mixed in with the breast milk as she was bottle feeding and that stuff too, to help her little immune system. Because the immune system and the development of the immune system at kids, up until the age of 5 years old, we want to do everything we can to help support that immune system. And depending on where people are at, as far as the different immunizations and stuff that they're giving to kids, I think anything that we can do to help support the immune system, whether people are pro that or against it, that's not the argument of this discussion, but to really just make sure that we're giving these young kids, babies in their early development, as much immunosupport as we can, because that sets their digestive tone and their microbiome tone for the rest of their life. Yeah, another good thing too is the gel on the nipples for breastfeeding moms, because they get abused, right?
Oh, yeah.
And they get raw, they get chomped on, so that's a really good, just helping maintain the health of the nipple and helping the healing process.
And the
And
other one is like thrush. A lot of babies
yeah,
and will get thrush in their mouth and moms on their nipples, and like the relieve gel on the nipple is so good.
yeah. And I'll get the question all the time, as I'm sure that you do, will silver help with X? And just put whatever condition you want on the end of that question, right? And the one thing that I'll say to people is, okay, well, what is X, right? Let's just do a little research. Is it a yeast, a bacteria, fungus, mold, virus? And then, so I kind of help people answer their own question with that. But then on the other thing is I know from doing this from so long, and as we're talking about here, is there's no negative responses to it. So if people say, can I try it for this? Can I try it for that? And I say, try it. Like, it's the one thing that I do know is it's not going to hurt you. So let's give it a try. Let's see how it helps. Let's see if it works. And 9 times out of 10, I'll get a call within a week or two saying, hey, it really worked. And I'm like, yes. And I knew the answer to start with, but
Sure.
I don't want to play the role of doctor and say, yeah, take this and fix that. That's not my place to do that. But
Well,
I want to help encourage people to once again be their own doctor.
yes, to look inside and, think, why am I reaching out to Juniper or Doug in the first place? Because
Mm-hmm.
I know that something isn't right. So is the inflammation? What is it stemming from? It's most likely a bacteria, a yeast, a pathogen, a fungus, a mold that is causing that problem from a foundational level. And so the answer, like you're saying, 9 out of 10, maybe 10 out of 10 times, it's yes. And is it going to cure your body? Is it going to cure all of these things? Many of us have many layers of issues going on, but when we begin to eradicate the bad overgrowths in our bodies, we give our bodies the opportunity to heal. And so I will never say I'm selling a cure here, but I am selling you a tool that will help your body function optimally.
Totally. And we're only going to be as effective as the decisions that people want to make for themselves as well. So the one
Oh,
thing that
that's
I'll
a good way to say it.
the one thing that I'll say to people is, you're where you're at as a result of things happening before your conversation with me. And the products that we're able to deliver people will be helpful, right? But you've also got to turn off the tap of what's making you sick. And if you're drinking a bottle or half a bottle of red wine every night, you're eating a whole bunch of white bread and rice and all of these sugars and everything that are feeding the yeast. And I kind of get frustrated sometimes with people that are unwilling to make any change and then get pissed off at me because the products don't work. It's like, we can only help so much and we can only do so much, but whoever is going to make this change has to make that first step as well.
Yes, I appreciate that so much because I find myself also getting frustrated. My baby has been struggling so bad. I will do anything. And then, they get the Children's Gut Rebalance kit and they start doing it, and then they reach out with questions like, I'm not seeing the healing. And my response is, have you worked through the course that I gave you access to with this kit? Because the reason I give access to that course is to give guidance on the other parts. One, we have to believe that we can heal. If we are resisting it and we don't believe that it's possible and we are questioning every step of it, there's this internal battle happening in our bodies, and we're going to find what we're looking for. And so if we're looking for the problems, we will see more problems. But if we are looking to heal, we can heal our bodies. So that's one part. And the second part is that you touched on is the food. I give an outline of the recommended foods to avoid. These are the foods that feed the bad bacteria and yeast overgrowths. And if you want to heal, it's recommended that you avoid them. And I get frustrated when they come back and they're like, there's no way we can do that. I've given you everything. Like, this is on you. Like, you don't have to do that, but you don't have to do anything, but you can choose what you're going to tolerate. And are you going to tolerate being sick, or are you going to tolerate eliminating these foods that are feeding the overgrowths in your body?
Yeah. And the unfortunate thing is some people are just happy being stuck, if that makes sense. And the biggest thing that we can do is offer that encouragement, right? Because when you've dealt with people in every part of their healing regime, let's say, and I find sometimes it's as much helping people find a way to get unstuck than it is the products. Because when you've been sick for years and it becomes a part of the psyche, and I've really seen this like with females in vaginal health and females in digestive health, right? They've been so long an entrapment of where they're at today. And there needs to be lots of change that happens. And just encouraging people like just to make that first step and then that second step. And in a lot of cases, healing isn't going to happen in 30 days or 60 days. It's going to be 3 months, 6 months, 9 months that is going to need to be dedicated to this because, and that's another problem that the internet and influencers have created. It's like, take this and you'll be good in 2 weeks, or take this and you'll be good in 30 days. Well, the one question I'll ask a lot of people is, well, how long did it take you to get as sick as you are?
Exactly.
And in a lot of cases, it's years, right? They'll be 40, 50 years old. And this journey of the body eroding itself has taken, 10, 20, 30 years, however long that's been. So to create an environment that, in 30 days, you're going to have a new you. Well, the body just by function goes through a rebuilding process on a quarterly basis, right? And we need to get through a few body cycles to start to get healthy cells, start to retrain the body. Like it's a process. And I'll cheer people on as much as I can through this, but I can't control what they eat or how they live. But I'll cheer them on to say this is the best way that you should go with this if you're going to create that environment of healing for your body. And once again, like, our body is masterfully created to heal itself of so many of the things that are happening within it. But the person needs to take that first step and want to break that cycle of where they're at. And just throwing supplements at it isn't going to fix the problem. It can be used as a stepping stone of, hey, I'm feeling better, to make those next steps. But it's not real to think that you're just going to take a bunch of supplements and all your problems are going to go away.
Yeah, I really love that. And that is exactly why I offer my supplements on subscription,
Mhm.
is to help make that part of the process easier, because healing really is a commitment.
Yes.
This healing here is not a quick fix, because it's real. This is real healing that will transform your body, and it's going to take time. And the other part that I want to touch on is, Ty and I were just talking about this, that, a lot of people, I think in general in life, they hold themselves back from making a decision because they're scared that they won't do it perfectly. So I have a friend who just said, I have this asthma. The doctor wants to put me on steroids, and it really doesn't feel right. And so, I talked to her about rebalancing her gut and, using cleanse and a nebulizer. And she's like, I've been wanting to talk to you for months about rebalancing, but I'm just afraid I don't eat as clean as you. And I'm afraid that it's just going to make it useless. And so the part of that I want to add right here is, you don't have to go into this expecting yourself to be perfect. Perfectionism is a thief of your progress. And so set that aside and just do your best. And you, again, be your own best doctor. Try eliminating the foods that I recommend. Try not eliminating them. Try just doing the supplements and see what happens. See what your body needs. But don't hold yourself back because you're afraid that you're not going to be perfect at the food recommendations.
No, we're going to fail. We're going to make mistakes. But if we just think about it, every small decision that we make makes a difference, right? Don't go after the huge big picture off the start and think that you're going to lose 50 pounds and be this model poster person. Just go after one small decision at a time. And eventually those small decisions start to compound amongst one another. They start to create new habits, and the new you comes out of that. But there is going to be setbacks, there is going to be challenges, there's going to be days where you scream and you shake your fists, but it's all part of the journey.
And I always like to talk about how healing, like, it's not the end result, it's the process. It's who
Mhm.
you are being through this process. And when you are able to just settle your mind and let all those loud voices calm down and stop trying to control everything, you actually expand into someone that you would have never been if you had control over every step. And so when you can kind of surrender to the healing process, you will get there. You will heal. But the person that you are as a healed person is built on all of the experiences that you've had along that journey. And so being able to recognize that and embrace yourself from day one to when you do finally feel amazing, I feel really helps change your experience in the healing process.
100%.
Okay, I have a couple more questions here. So, okay, the healing method that I share with my rebalance kits, it's a certain dosage you do throughout the rebalance. And then I recommend maintenance dosing. My family does maintenance dosing. So this is, for adults, it's 2 teaspoons of cleanse. For children, it's 1. And we do this daily. And so this question is in regard to this. If we do maintenance dosage, does the body become resistant? So we touched on this a little bit ago, and the answer was no. But can we answer it specifically for this question?
Yeah, back to the body is constantly under attack from foreign invaders. So there's new foreign invaders being introduced to the body every day. So if we want to keep the immune system functioning at its best, then taking this as a daily immune support is highly recommended. And the body will not build up a tolerance to it like it does with other things, because once again, we're going after the electrical properties of these foreign invaders. So we're kind of constantly under war every day, but we're not building up a tolerance to it.
Okay, so can I ask you a personal question? Do you take it every day?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I figured
Twice a
so.
day. Twice a day. I've got it on my desk and I've got it in my washroom. So I'll take it every morning as soon as I walk into my office, and then I'll take it every night before bed.
Okay, that's what I do too.
And the other thing that I do is I will, when I go into the shower, I'll actually take a mouthful. I never measure it. I always just drink it from the bottle, but this is just my personal regimen. When I go into the shower, I'll take it and I'll hold it in my mouth and swish it in my mouth the entire time that I'm in the shower. So that's 5, 6, 7 minutes, however long a shower is. And I'll swish it around my mouth the whole time in the shower, and then I'll swallow it at the end of the shower. Because
Whoa.
knowing what it's doing from an oral care standpoint and how much of those foreign invaders, are in the mouth and the gums, that's just my personal um, regimen of what I do.
That's really neat. I do get the question a lot, like how can I use this for tooth infections
Mm.
or any oral? So that's really neat.
Yeah, and oral concerns, bleeding gums, tooth infections, all of this kind of stuff, it is wonderful. And what we, like I say, what we know is if we can get silver into the affected area for 2 minutes, we're going to help annihilate those things. So for me, it starts in the oral cavity, right? So like I say, that 3 to 5, 7 minutes in the shower, the entire time I'm just circulating it, pushing it through my teeth with my tongue and everything. And what a great way to just keep the biome of the mouth clean.
Wow.
So if women were to do that, and men get it too, but they get that oral thrush, that yellow or that white tongue. If there's a great way right there to tell if it's working or not, right? Do exactly as I'm saying there every day for a week, and just watch your tongue.
Wow. Okay, I'm gonna start doing that, and I want my kids and Ty to do that.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm gonna go to the next question. What makes silver and this supplement unique to other protocols?
Okay, so back to the point that it doesn't metabolize in the digestive system. It's cleansing the yeast, bacteria, fungus, mold, and viruses out of the body, and it's not being interrupted by any other supplements that somebody is taking. So this can be safe and effective and a value add to any other supplement or dietary protocols.
Okay. And the next three we've touched on, I'm going to read them here because I want these women to feel acknowledged, but we have touched on these. So this one's very similar. Differences in your product and Herbal Cleanse products. Like, how does yours work so well? So we've gone over that. The next one is I take it daily, but I'm getting told I shouldn't. Can you clarify why it's not dangerous?
Yeah, the I'm getting told that I shouldn't is coming by somebody that's looked at Dr. Google online and seen that silver can turn you blue, which we addressed earlier in the fact that this product over 20 years has never done that with anybody taking this day in, day out religiously for long periods of time. So that's more, you know, our friends and other people in our lives always seem to know more than we do without having anything to base their decisions or their feedback on. So, if anything, I just say be careful on who you take your advice from, because they're either coming off a hearsay or what Dr. Google's saying, and they haven't done any research other than I heard. So, because I heard, I'm going to tell you what I think when I don't have anything to base what I think on other than an opinion.
Exactly. And I mean, all of our family, our friends, even influencers, they don't have bad intention. But just how we talked about a little while ago is not everybody is an expert on everything. And unless if the person that you are being told from has done research on whatever it is, whether it's silver or whatever it is, um, I think I kind of see that as an invitation to, okay, if they're feedback is making me uncomfortable, I actually need to learn more myself so that I can make the best decision for me.
Yeah. And if somebody says to you, you shouldn't be taking this every day, or you should be doing this, and it's not even in regards to silver, it's just in any of it. Somebody's saying, well, don't take this or don't do that. Okay, well, I'll always ask them, well, why are you saying that? Wow, they say, well, who's they? Wow, and you never actually get to an answer as to why they're giving you the feedback that they're giving you. And it's like, okay, well, thanks for giving me all this advice when you actually have nothing to even put it on, right? Well, it's true. Like,
True. It just makes me die laughing for a second. I felt like I was sitting at my grandma's dining room table with my dad and my uncle, and then just having that exact conversation. Well, they.
yeah,
And I just remember, even as a child, sitting there thinking, who the hell are they?
right.
Like,
Well, but it always comes up, and I love my mother-in-law to pieces, but she's like my prime culprit in my life, because her and I will argue about everything all the time. It's out of love, but you shouldn't do this. Well, why not? Well, they say. Well, who's they? Well, they, them. The news or this or that. They
so
don't need to make your health decisions. How would we just say that?
great answer. We have two more here. You answered this one earlier, but I want you to cite the sources again. Are there any long-term studies on the use of silver? Where can people find that?
Yeah, people can go to the National Institute of Health or PubMed, John Hopkins Society. There's a there's a there's over 5,000 research papers that have been done there. There used to be a lot more, but unfortunately, some of them got taken down when the world went crazy a couple of years ago. That's a whole other conversation. But there still is a lot of research out there with lots of citations by leading researchers.
Okay. And then earlier you said maybe an author or about structured water. Who is,
Dr. Roy Pollock.
okay.
Yeah.
How do you spell that?
Pollock.
Okay. And then the last question here, is it safe for a child who has MTHFR? I'm so nervous to try something and make him worse.
Yeah, and this comes up a lot, the gene mutation. But if you look into it and come back to it, it's actually a bacterial concern.
I
So,
message you a lot about this gene. I get this question a lot. And when I receive questions that I don't know the answer to, I'm reaching out to you or other experts who help me create my products, because I don't want to just guess. I don't want to get my answers from Google. I want to get answers from experts like you who actually know. And so I know that you have given me many, many responses in regard to this gene. And so I want to maybe just take a minute here. This is our last question. We're going to wrap this episode up, but I just want to go into that for a minute, because this is
there is a peer-reviewed medical research on PubMed specifically around silver and MTHR.
really,
Mhm.
oh my gosh. Okay. Maybe I'll try to find that. And or if you can send it to me, I'll link it in the.
Yeah, and there's staph and strep, and which are all bacterials. But yeah, there's quite a bit of research there.
Okay. So to answer it really quickly right here, is there a concern in doing the children's gut rebalance or taking cleanse for a child who has this gene mutation, or a woman or anyone?
No, not at all, because once again, we're not commanding any functions of the body to go into a negative response mode, because we're strictly only attacking yeast, bacteria, fungus, and mold in the body. So when we start negative responses from the body in certain substances, is because the digestive system has broken it down and it has to do a function with that and can deliver through the body. We got to remember that we're not metabolizing in the body, and that's one of the biggest things with silver, is it doesn't metabolize in the body, meaning it commands no digestive or no immune function in order to do what it does. Just think of it as is circulating through the body, going after the foreign invaders, but not going after to change the physiology of the cells or the body.
Okay. So I will hear this a lot from moms who have done it. And I recently received a message saying, I think her gene has disappeared. And what she's meaning is her child's not experiencing
The
the
symptoms.
symptoms anymore. And so, of course, our genes don't disappear, but we can change the way that our bodies function. Just like bad bacteria, yeast, pathogens, viruses change the way that our bodies function, we can heal our bodies and change the way that our bodies function.
Right. So when we think about our immune system for a second, too, is our immune system's absolutely brilliant. And scientists 4 years ago thought that our immune systems weren't brilliant, right? It's the only way to say it. But so when we think about it for a second, when you get chicken pox as a kid, the chicken pox never leaves the body. The immune system is keeping that chicken pox at bay. It taught itself how to take care of that, right? So when we look at a lot of the different things that happen within the body, because that's where, if you notice, somebody can be good and healthy, and then all of a sudden they break a leg or have some kind of tragic event happen to their body, and all of a sudden they get all these other problems, right? And they're like, why did this happen? Well, our immune system only has so many soldiers to go around. It's the easiest way to say it. So when somebody has, like a broken leg or something really bad happen to their body, that immune system unfortunately gives up over here, and it has to all run over here to help fix that, which is where we see those other things happening within the body at that time. So the best answer to that is what we're talking about here is the immune support factor, that we're keeping the immune system functioning. It is absolutely 100%. So in regards to what you're talking about here with this child and this MTHR, is the immune system's keeping that in bay, so the symptoms aren't being manifested in how it's adopting into the life of the child. So when we look at the MTHR, for instance, is it going away? We don't really know. But what we know is we've taken the immune system to a point where it can keep that at bay. And the child or whoever is suffering from that concern is going to feel a lot better because we've helped the immune system overcome that concern.
The thing about my community is these women are very much like me in the sense, I think most moms are. We want to understand how and why things are working. And so being able to really paint a picture so they understand why. And then, after you do something like the women's or children's gut rebalance kit, maybe you do a few back to back, why maintaining the dosage is important and how that helps maintain your immune system and the healing that you've experienced. And Doug, this has been a really powerful conversation, and I cannot wait to share this with my audience. Thank you so much for being here. And I have a feeling that we'll have you back on the show.
Thank you. And anytime. And if people have questions, from the years we've been working together, we're going to make sure that we help, and look forward to doing more of these together.
Thank you for joining me in today's episode of Follow Your Gut. If we don't know each other, I'm Juniper Bennett. I'm a homeschooling mama to my 4 children, a dedicated microbiome specialist, certified family health coach, author of the Microbiome Cookbook, and the founder of ōNLē Organics, a supplement and education brand focused on women and children's gut health. Make sure to subscribe to the Nourished newsletter so you never miss an episode. Along with everything else mentioned in today's episode, there is a link for you to subscribe right below in the show notes. Lastly, it's important for you to know that the information shared on this podcast is based on my personal experiences and research. Please always trust your own inner voice of wisdom and your healthcare professional. Until next time.